So the reception of Wuthering Waves has been overwhelmingly mixed. You hear this and this. But today I want to tell you the story of someone who had once thought this game had the perfect blueprint for everything that mattered. For that, we have to go back to 2020, when I first discovered a little company called Kuro Game. Simply put, I fell in love with everything that Kuro valued. At first, it was the music. These unbelievable ethereal tunes transported me to another world. Then it was the philosophy of their game design. The obvious emphasis on engaging with every mechanic in the game, the seamless flow and the beautiful synergy with each of them to this degree was something I had never experienced, and it was also just really fucking cool. I did not have any expectations on the story, but Kuro just understood a very specific beauty in bleakness. These vibes and atmosphere are so quintessentially me. It's like Kuro based it off of the deepest desires of my brain. The update sort of became a reward for enduring each month. And then, on one random day, word on the street was that Kuro Game would be making an open world action game and finally become Kuro Games. The inception of Wuthering Waves. This was it. The only thing PGR lacked was scale, and they can finally get that. I was so excited that I went out and bought the book Wuthering Heights just because it had one same word. Looking back at it, that was really dumb, but also kind of cute. That period of time was surreal. Thinking of the endless heights Wuthering Waves could possibly achieve, I was dead set that this game would be something special. However, reality is not always so kind. It has been almost a month since Wuthering Waves released, and I never read Wuthering Heights until 2 days ago. What happened? Where did all the excitement go? Why didn't I read it before? And why am I reading it now? Well, this is how the unending excitement turned into constant disappointment. This song is where it all began, the beginning of the end, if you will. The song's name is Flow. It was the very first piece of in-game music I heard of this game, way back in the technical test. This song changed me. The otherworldliness, the instrumentation, the immaculate use of distortions, and the fucking violin. It really did feel like this game had everything and more. The aura and soul in this piece was screaming at me, begging to be nurtured. This was the hallmark of Kuro Games, and was exactly what Kuro Games was to me. But what happened next was a tragedy. This song has been lost ever since. The game went through major changes over its development cycle. Kuro Games went up against something way more powerful than they ever imagined: gacha gamers. They more or less labeled all of Kuro's ideas as dogshit. The weight of pressure bore down on them like a relentless tide. They had a lot to prove and a lot of people to win back. The concept of the world was reduced to being soulless. They explicitly deviated from what's interesting about Wuthering Waves, what made Kuro Games. It instead moved towards what was already done, out of a desire to give what was not already given. As a consequence, however, the Kuro Games hallmarks that their own fans loved did not exist anymore. We lost this iconic moment. We lost the ideation of this as a whole. We lost all of these. As they released more trailers, every one of them felt more unimpressive than the previous ones for me. And the game, as it is now, is utterly unrecognizable from what we were teased. These two are not the same game. From vibes like endlessly falling from the sky while seeing the world around you being destroyed and rebirthed to Kingdom Hearts 3. So many things went awry, and I can't really say what would have been better. Maybe what we have in the end was actually the best and most thought out version of the concept of the game. Ultimately though, it wasn't about the game being good or bad anymore. I lost interest because it was simply not the same thing that grabbed me. The world, the music, the atmosphere was entirely something else, and it was becoming increasingly obvious that Wuthering Waves would continue to deviate from its ideation, never to feel the same ever again. It's July 17th, 2024. I am playing Wuthering Waves. Almost every day, in fact. It's weird, right? I just talked so much about how upset and uninterested I became at the game, and yet, I am still playing it. It is not like I am not upset anymore. I still bitch about it every day. However, I still continue to play it. This whole contradiction is surprisingly very relatable to basic human psychology, the craving for comfort, the comfort I have for Kuro games. So I want to talk about my experience with Wuthering Waves as someone who believes in Kuro, and hopefully discuss a little bit about human psychology, because thinking too much about what your thoughts of a game is surprisingly effective to make you reflect on how humans naturally act. During the time of release, the only thing I did not know about the game was the only thing motivating me to try it out, the story. Everything else made me disappointed at what could have been. However, before talking about the story, I want to address the obvious. To no one's surprise, I was dazzled by the combat. Yeah, it was the best combat in the entire genre. It tests your understanding of the game with incredible synergy. The fluidity and harmony between the mechanics are practically screaming at you at every moment you play. But it also achieved something far greater for me. It blew away my doubts of Kuro game. It is not the direction that I hoped, but it was built with the same values of Kuro games. The ones I fell in love with, the ones with meticulous emphasis on encouraging player engagement. It is unmissable. It is so intuitive and self-evidently obvious when you just play it. I think one of my friends just sums it up perfectly. With what they did with the direction they chose, it is utterly impossible to make the combat any better. Deep down, I wanted this game to cook, because of the comfort I previously got from Kuro games. Remember how I said each update of Punishing Grey Raven felt like a reward for enduring each month? The profound impact it had on me cannot be understated. Getting on PGR at the end of the day, talking about it, listening to its music, engaging with everything surrounding it, became a way to relieve stress. It became a comfort. I wanted more of that in Wuthering Waves. Even though I saw so many red flags, I still wanted to try it out in the desperate hope that it somehow proved me wrong. I had many conversations with people who told me to just ignore the game if it bothered me so much. Anyone would, because of my incessant complaints day in and day out. But looking back at it, my reason for still keeping an eye out, my reason for still wanting to talk about this game, was nothing more than the selfish hope that somehow my belief in Kuro game would be justified. That I didn't just believe in them for the sake of it. Basically, I was being a tsundere little bitch. But it's fascinating how, even in such insignificant things like video games, we humans want to keep our comfort zones as safe as possible. There are so much talk on the internet about going out of your comfort zone and how your comfort zones are harming your growth. And there definitely is merit to that, but isn't it also incredibly warm to be embraced by your comfort zone? The feeling of serene tranquility makes you think of that comfort zone as something absolutely faultless. My hope in Kuro games might have been similar to that, as I was still hoping that Wuthering Waves would be incredible. Even when you see something that is clearly wrong, completely irrational, your mind does its utmost to ignore it just because of the sheer want of comfort. In a way, this is so beautiful. A very beautiful form of naivety that every person wants to feel safe. But going back to Wuthering Waves, as I said, the direction is not something that generally appeals to me. However, what is done has been done with the utmost meticulous attention and cannot be understated. This is what Kuro games is to me, and I could not be more glad that, at the end of the day, it is still them. However different the form is, the mechanics in the game, like the forte circuits, the boss design, the echoes, and especially the intro and outro skills are so deeply intertwined with each other. It's remarkable. The synergy between how every mechanic interacts with each other is unprecedented levels of cool. And at the center of it all is the intro and outro skills, just like the Matrix in Punishing Grey Raven. It really did feel like in search of copper, I may have stumbled upon gold, because the story too has shown me more promise than I ever expected. I had known nothing of it, so in turn I had no expectations. But to my pleasant surprise, very quickly I realized that they have something cooking, something just out of reach. Perhaps it is because of their inexperience of this style of storytelling. Perhaps it is something entirely different. However, the small moments of brilliance were glimmering. One in particular was the beginning of Act 6, an esoteric depiction of the most grounded and relatable internal conflicts. That was when, for the first time in the game's story, I went, yeah, this is Kuro games. But unfortunately, their focus on the groundedness of their characters are few and far between. What the actual fuck was the Yinlin story, dude? But they do show promise, and that is precisely where I want them to focus more. I know the writer of this game can write the most believable human emotions in the most unbelievable way. They have already sown the seeds for that in Wuthering Waves. All that is left is to nurture it. Now what about the world building? How well the world is built is probably directly proportional to how much of the world I want to see. So take a guess, how much of the world have I explored in the past month of playing every single day? 42%. So it should give you an idea of if my opinion of it had gotten better. In fact, I think it got even worse. The reason is quite simple. The world, as it is currently, is utterly devoid of a sense of being. This was the first place I visited after the prologue. I bet most of you cannot even remember its name. This is a village. I do not know why it is here, so close to the city. There are a lot of people. I do not know what they are doing. I want to know, but I am unable to. I cannot talk to a single person. I could only find one kid to talk to, and he only talks about furries. See, when I first reached here, I desperately wanted to immerse myself in the vibe of this place, but it does not even have its own music, just generic Plains Theme 21. So why then does this village exist? Let's look at another place. Like, look at this. This place should be cool, and it would, except it was not made for this game. So it does not feel like it has a place in this game. There are destroyed, floating buildings up in the sky, and a train perpetually circulating it. This is actually some Ghibli level stuff, but it says a lot when the only thing memorable for me exploring this was the rocks with dogshit texture and no collision at the top, and the train that takes me out of bounds. Does it seem heavy? Does it seem like a place with unutterable history? At best, it feels nothing, and at worst, it feels like something I would make. The problem with this game is that the direction shift never stopped shifting, never finding something to land on. Cities, esoteric landscapes, vastly different biomes, small villages, hideouts, bases, ravines, tunnels, different types of enemies fighting, the weather are all just ideas, concepts that have not found their place in this world, just as I have not found Kuro Game's touch. I was watching back the footage of the technical test of Wuthering Waves, and look at this, man. The architecture, the style of lighting, the vibe of Jinzhou was so much more soulful and cohesive than we currently have. Whereas this, the lighting is uncohesive and uninspired. There's no vibes to speak of, and the lack of visual depth makes it a visual mush. It is upsetting because I have never walked, nor have ever wanted to walk around this Jinzhou, taking in the vibes, listening to the music, soaking in the world. But do you know what? I want to for this. Do not confuse this with detail. I am talking about tone. Am I looking at it with rose-tinted glasses? Maybe. But what is undoubtedly worse is the music. Generally, the music, the auditory reception would be fundamental in creating a vibe for a place. But there is no melody in sight, no theme to see, no vibe to feel. I would actually argue that playing this game with the music turned off is a better experience. This hurts me on a fundamental level. Remember in the beginning of the video when I showed you my tweets being hyped about this game? Well, you might have noticed that the majority of those are about the music. My naivety is funny really. OST of the century? Yeah, that aged fantastically. But considering the game is based around sound, it is not only ironic that the music of this game is completely soulless, but there is also a surprising lack of sound elements in the world that is separate from the main story. I remember the devs said that they were proud of their unique weather system. Yes, it is unique. Seeing things like rain falling upwards and a sky of sea genuinely makes me want to clap my feet. It is the exact type of unearthly I love. But how can it be a part of the natural world you create when it is completely absent from the world except the main story? What made them blind to their own strengths? Why not put faith and lock into this brilliant idea you had? When the game was conceptualized with this much vibe and atmosphere, I had faith in Kuro, because Kuro always delivered the atmosphere in just the way I loved. How unbelievably beautiful is telling your friend, "Can I hear you sing one last time?" as the last comfort you want before losing everything. Where is this? It is difficult to accept that the vibe of this game amount to, well, nothing actually.
Hi everyone， 我是 Solen， 终于又再次和大家见面了，我真的非常的开心。经历了3年多的爆肝开发，我们最新的作品开放世界动作游戏《明朝》马上就要在5月23日正式公测了。回顾明朝的开发，初衷就是希望可以带给大家一个全新的开放世界动作游戏的体验。但想象很美好嘛，实际做起来、实践起来肯定是困难重重嘛。
I wanted Wuthering Waves to smell like the rain, gazing at the otherworldliness with a cup of tea that tasted like melancholy. But as it is, there's nothing more substantial than the gameplay of Genshin Impact. Actually, in this regard, Teyvat, the world of Genshin Impact, did feel like a living, breathing place at times. I have not played the game in 3 years, and yet, I still vividly remember enjoying the dynamics of the people in Mondstadt, the connection they have with the Dawn Winery that was near Mondstadt. Completely unlike this place near Jinzhou. This place is a microcosm of everything that is wrong with the world of Wuthering Waves. A world breathes life through each and every person that lives in it. It's a big place and it will go on with or without you. Everyone has their own story, and each story needs to continue for the world to keep on living. The first time I discovered Chinsa village, it was breathtaking. The first person I talked to was a writer who moved away and settled into this quaint place, far away from the city. The music reverberating this tranquility of new beginnings that the writer shared had meaning. It had place. As I was talking to some bird, this story was taking place. That's why it feels real. You don't feel you're guided by a force of convenience made to entertain you. You feel as if you've traveled to a faraway land, being enamored by how the people survive in a world so different from yours. If this world has rain falling upwards, show me how that affects those that are supposed to breathe life into it. I curse my lack of skill to properly explain why the world simply does not hit, but I think most people who played this game would tend to agree that the world in Wuthering Waves rarely, if ever, makes you want to take it in slowly and enjoy the vibes. Ultimately, the thing that grabbed me the most about Wuthering Waves is still failing to meet every expectations I have. So why then am I still continuing to play this game? This brings me to another amusing thing about human nature, the desire to protect our comfort. Like the cliche story of someone not confessing their feelings purely due to the horror of ruining the level of comfort they have. Or how in a relationship, oftentimes you forgive your partner as many times as you can bear should they hurt you, just to keep that level of comfort between you two. We are so hungry for comfort that we treasure having that person to go to at the end of the day, and deliberately ignore how that same person has the deadliest weapon to hurt us: our trust. My relationship with Wuthering Waves is just like this now. The only good things about the game to me is the combat and some of the story. If this was any other development team but Kuro Games, then I probably would not have played this as often, or perhaps at all. My perception of this game is biased to a fault, but I still want to give them a chance. I want to keep my level of comfort with them even though there is a high probability that I will continue to be disappointed, because that only makes me human, and I want Wuthering Waves to respect that and feel like it has a soul too. So there we have it. That is where the story ends for now. Looking back at myself, it really was cute how hopeful I was for Wuthering Waves. I talked about it like my life depended on it, and in a way it is warm to have something that you look forward to. Because as time goes on, there will be countless things that make you lose yourself in sadness. Not having anything to look forward to, not having a reason to wake up. This story is precisely a reflection of that. I found many flaws, became upset, lost every reason to look forward to this game. I think how I feel about the change of direction can be summed up perfectly by a quote by Kuro Games themselves. You die because you lived. You rot because you were. The initial ideation of Wuthering Waves had so much life, and it is precisely because of that its rotting is now unmistakably apparent. But relationships are about compromise. I did not get exactly what I wanted, yes, but it is not like what I got was utterly trash. Wuthering Waves has shown me promise with its combat and story. I can compromise, and as a fan of Kuro Games, I irrationally want to continue believing in them. Maybe with time they will win me over completely. That will make me forego the lingering distaste I have. What do they need to do to achieve that? For me, it's giving their primary focus on the storytelling of the characters. Breathe life into them. Make them actually feel like they are living in the world you have worked so hard to create. And whatever you do with your world, do it well, with substance, because if you don't, you are doing nothing but losing your identity. So in conclusion, my reception of Wuthering Waves as a fan of Kuro Games is overwhelmingly mixed, just like everyone else.